Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. A couple of weeks ago I posted a video in which I talked about my poetry. Now that is not a usual thing for this channel. This channel has morphed into a booktube channel, although its origins lay elsewhere. My focus now is becoming a reader, trying to read with sort of the intensity that I once devoted to writing. But I thought it was fair to give a little talk about my illustrious writing career, as it were, and I did so mainly focusing on 6 works which held special significance to me. I will post a link to that video in the description if you want to check it out. Now, there were a couple of flaws to that video which kind of bugged me, and here I'm going to try to rectify them. One of the books which I talked about I was unable to find, and that was this book, The Condemnation. It's a book of villanelles. The context behind it is not really important, but I was unable to find it, and I described the cover. Well, here it is. It occurred to me this evening where it should be, and I found it actually in the spot where it was all along, and I should have known it was all along. It's a book of villanelles, and it is the first in 3 volumes of villanelles. So shortly after that came the second one, The Arraignment, and some years after that came the third one, The Recusal. Now, there are some thematic relations between the 3 books, I am sure. I'm not going to flesh it out. I'm not going to look into it and just make sure that what I said there is correct. After I've written something, maybe during the first week or 2, I spend time with it. I hunt for typos, and after that, I let it go, and I generally don't return to it. So it bugged me, though, that I had lost the book, I thought, and was not able to present it to the viewer when I made that video. That is only one of the things that slightly irritated me about the video as it came out. And the second thing was that I forgot to mention the X in my name, at least on most of the books published and available at lulu.com. I'll put a link to those in the description as well. And I thought I should recount that story. It was 11 years ago now, I think. Well, I was new on Facebook, and print-on-demand books were a new thing, and it suddenly became possible, feasible, and relatively easy to all of a sudden make your manuscripts available online as published books. And so that was my project. I decided to do that. And I also created a website for myself. And the URL of davidnovak.com or even .org was not available. And so I decided to add an X in the middle because it was available. And then, to make matters worse, I decided at all of my Lulu titles to insert the X. So you have David X Novak. There is no significance to it beyond that. My middle name might be conceived of as something like Xavier, I thought, but no, it is not so. That, with time, came to be a decision that I regretted. I don't want my name to be known as David X. Now I have some titles out there with David Novak, which is a very common name, and David X, which is not a common name, but regardless, if somebody wants to find David Novak, the writer of poetry, they will do it, X or no X. I can't just eliminate the X, however. Lulu, as a self-pub site, has gone through iterations. They've changed their cover manager once or twice in the interim. And I don't believe that I could just remove the X at this time. And I'm satisfied with the covers. I mean, all of the covers there. I'm not 100% satisfied. It would be nice to have a cover designer do one's covers for one. But when you go to a self-pub site, you do the best you can. But I can't just take out the X and have the same cover. I would have to work up a whole new cover on the new cover manager. Earlier this year, I put out 2 books, and I had to go through the whole ordeal of learning how to utilize the Lulu cover manager, which doesn't work all that well, at least not on a Mac. And I did it through trial and tribulation and so forth. I did it, but I can't see doing it again. And so the X is there to stay. And beyond that, were I to do that, I would want to go back in, and I still would like to do it, and correct such typos as there may be in these. With the span of 11 years betwixt when I put them up and now, at least in the extreme cases, some have gone up with less duration, separating me from them now. But even so, I would now be more likely to find the typos that I missed then. However, at this time, I don't have Microsoft Word, which would be necessary. Well, let me add one further thing in. I would really like to put the plays that I have written up on the website as well. Now, I showed one, which was the Peony Pavilion, which was a long play. Comparatively, it's 6 times the length of a normal play that I would have written. I have about 20 other plays that I've written, and I would like to put them all up on Lulu. But you have, of course, not to mention the lack of Microsoft Word problem. You have also a typo problem, which is a little bit more intensive. It was always my practice in the first couple of weeks after I wrote a new book or a new play to print out the typescript, and then I would go over it numbers of times and noting all of the errors, fixing them. But then sometimes I would fix them on one file but not the other file. Sometimes, and probably most times after that, I just compiled a list of the errors, but then it turned out that oftentimes, because it happened at a time when I wasn't expecting to do it, I would do it on like a scrap of paper or the back of an envelope. And so I would have these different lists of typos and errors, and now I have no idea where any of them are. So there are those technical difficulties in trying to do that. And then there is the difficulty of just retrieving those works, those plays and books of poetry that I have not already made it online to Lulu's site. And many of them are housed in a old PC. It would count as antique by now. That's tucked in a little corner in the basement. About 5 years ago, I tried to turn it on and I couldn't, and I fiddled with it and was able to. I still think that I could turn it on now. So I think they're all on the computer now. Various of them have also been put onto a flash drive, and I think I could get them. But any number of them did not survive we're talking old works here, mind you, did not survive the demise of the floppy disks that they were initially on. So that would mean I would have to scan them, then I would have to figure out all of the errors, then I would have to, get them onto Microsoft Word, then I would have to format and blah, blah, blah. And it is just, the whole lot of it would be a monumental task beyond me. 20 years ago, or whenever it was that I first started writing full works, it was, I think, the year Clinton was elected president, so early 90s. I was working and had been working for a long time, mostly in clerical functions, in jobs all over the place. I had factory jobs, to be sure, but it was almost always in the office in the factory. I did data entry, I did filing, I did envelope addressing, I did phone calling. I mentioned that recently that I was at EFTPS when they started. That was at First Chicago Bank, and it was a temp job, but one of those temp jobs that could be permanent temp, as was prevalent in those days. So I was so good at doing clerical work. None of the clerical aspects of whipping out the manuscript. I got to where I would write my play, and I would be up writing the play, and then, I'm exhausted. I can't do any more. But then I would go and I would type it, because I write everything in a notebook by hand. Then I would type it all, and however many pages I did, then I would type it. Then I would go to sleep. Then maybe I would drink something or eat something. Then next day, there I would be at it again. I'd be writing, and then I would, and I had all of my clerical techniques down, just bam, bam, bam. And over the years, I have become incapable of doing that kind of work. And more than incapable, I am constitutionally just unable to stomach that kind of business at this point. Not to mention the fact that when one has been a prolific writer, and I was a prolific writer, one has so much stuff and it just accumulates. And so even just to go down and get the boxes in which the original notebooks and original scattered pages are would be more of a task than I want to deal with. And fast, it's going to be coming to a point where I can't even physically lift the box. That's just what happens with age. So there are all of these roadblocks, all of these obstacles preventing me from getting the stuff that is up at Lulu in the sort of condition that I would like it to be, including eliminating the X from the author's name on these covers. And, well, it would have to be eliminated from the Microsoft Word in the interior too, which, of course, just occurred to me. So all of that is beyond me, and with a climate catastrophe looming upon us at this time, I just don't think it is that significant. For me, in the remaining time that I have left, I've decided that my priority is to try to read and devote myself to the human legacy of literature and learning as much as possible, just because it's interesting, it's fun, and it's what I want to do. Had I whirled enough and time, then maybe I would go back and try writing this or that. Whilst I was writing plays, one thing that I wanted to do very much was historical plays. And it's, except in one instance, it's a challenge I failed at every single time. Part of the reason I failed was that I was not capable of doing the requisite reading for research purposes. Oftentimes it was simply that I could not figure out a mode in which to structure the play. It's not as easy as you might think it would be. So this video is nothing more than sort of a footnote to that previous video, which again I will link in the description below, and I will let the subject rest at that. Thank you very much for stopping by.